Mount Everest gets all the headlines. It's the mountain everyone knows, the one that shows up in documentaries and death toll statistics and bucket list conversations. But here's something most people don't realize. There's another mountain out there that has killed 5 times more climbers than Everest ever has. It's not the tallest peak in Europe. It's not even the steepest. Most weekend hikers couldn't point to it on a map, and fewer still can pronounce its name correctly. But every single year, this mountain claims around 100 lives. That mountain is Mont Blanc. What makes Mont Blanc so deadly isn't its technical difficulty. On paper, it looks almost friendly. Cable cars carry tourists to 12,000 feet as casually as an elevator ride to a hotel lobby. Glossy brochures show gentle snow slopes and clear blue skies. The summit seems close enough to touch, and that's exactly the problem. Mont Blanc doesn't announce itself as a killer. It whispers. It seduces. It lets climbers believe they've already won before they've even started. Then it responds with avalanches that move at 70 miles per hour, with massive chunks of glacier ice that can stand for decades or collapse without warning, with crevasses hidden beneath thin crusts of snow, waiting for one misplaced foot. The stories I'm about to tell you span 5 decades of tragedy on this mountain. You'll meet an Olympic champion who couldn't outrun physics, a British mountaineer who had written avalanche safety guidelines and still couldn't detect the danger forming silently above him, a teenage prodigy who had already stood on top of Everest but couldn't survive a clear morning on Mont Blanc. 32 people died in these 5 incidents alone. 32 experienced, prepared, careful climbers who did everything right and still never came home. This is the mountain that kills more climbers than any other on Earth, and almost no one talks about it. Let's get into why Mont Blanc is quietly becoming one of the deadliest climbs in the world, and why even expert mountaineers can't survive it. July 12th, 2012. 28 climbers from Britain, Germany, Spain, and Switzerland set out for Mont Blanc long before sunrise. They moved slowly through the darkness, roped together in small teams, their headlamps carving small pools of light into the frozen slope. Among them was Roger Payne, one of Britain's most respected mountain guides. Roger had climbed big peaks in the Himalayas. He'd served as General Secretary of the British Mountaineering Council. He had literally helped write avalanche safety guidelines. If there was anyone on Earth you'd trust to lead you safely up a mountain, it was Roger Payne. Here's something important to understand. The way most people climb Mont Blanc is by following a famous path called the Trois Monts route. This route takes you over 2 peaks, Mont Blanc du Tacoul and Mont Maudit, before you finally reach the main summit. So, when people talk about climbing Mont Blanc, they're including these dangerous stretches too. And Mont Maudit, in a twist of dark irony, literally translates to the cursed mountain. The teams climbed carefully through the freezing air, working their way up that cursed peak in total darkness. No one was rushing. They were calm, methodical, experienced. By the time the first hint of dawn touched the horizon, they had already reached 13,000 feet. From their viewpoint, it was a perfect morning. They were making excellent progress, but what they couldn't see, what no one could possibly see, was that high above them, an ice plate the size of a building was slowly detaching from the mountain face. At 5:25 a.m., without any warning, it broke free. Picture yourself there for a moment. You're focused on your breathing, on your next step, on the beautiful sunrise starting to paint the snow pink and gold. Then suddenly, a sound like thunder. You look up just in time to see a wall of white racing toward you at 70 miles per hour. The ice plate hit the upper teams like a guillotine, knocking climbers off their anchors. As those bodies fell, they triggered a secondary avalanche 500 feet wide that swept even more people down the slope. In seconds, what had been a quiet morning climb turned into absolute chaos. Climbers who moments earlier had been securely roped together were now tumbling uncontrollably through tons of moving snow, ice, and rock. When rescuers finally arrived, the scene was devastating. 9 climbers were dead, including Roger Payne. 9 others were badly injured. Some of the victims were found still tied together by their ropes, connected in life, connected in death. Rescue teams later confirmed that conditions that morning had seemed completely normal. No avalanche warnings had been issued, but strong winds in previous days had quietly created hidden, unstable pockets of ice high above the route. Even Roger, with all his expertise, couldn't detect these invisible dangers until it was far too late. In that moment, Mont Blanc reminded the climbing world of a harsh truth. Experience doesn't always protect you. Mountains don't award points for past performance. As tragic as the 2012 disaster was, it wasn't the first time Mont Blanc taught experienced climbers brutal lessons. Just 4 years earlier, the mountain had displayed its nature in a single moment of chaos that still haunts survivors today. It was just after 3 a.m. on August 24, 2008. High on the Col du Midi, nearly 12,000 feet above sea level, the Gouter hut buzzed with quiet energy. Inside, climbers from all over Europe were zipping up jackets, tightening boots, and checking their ropes. This hut, perched at about 11,800 feet beneath the sharp face of Mont Blanc du Tacoul, is the main starting point for anyone attempting the famous Trois Monts route. Nearly 50 climbers stepped out into the thin, frozen air that morning, their headlamps casting shaky circles on the snow as they roped together in small groups. Most of them didn't know each other's names, but in those early hours, they shared the same goal: cross Mont Blanc du Tacoul and Mont Maudit, then, maybe, just maybe, stand on the highest summit in the Alps by sunrise. If you've never been high in the mountains before dawn, it's a strange experience. The world is absolutely silent. The only sound is the crunch of crampons biting into old snow. The cold seems to crystallize the air itself. Your breath forms clouds that hang motionless around your headlamp. Everyone around you moves carefully, exhaling small ghosts of vapor into the darkness. It's a mix of excitement, nervous energy, and trust. Everyone believing that if they follow the track, if they rope together, if they do everything right, they'll see sunrise from above the clouds. None of them knew that, high above, danger was building silently. An apartment block-sized chunk of glacier ice, what climbers call a serac, was slowly fracturing. These ice formations are notorious for their instability. They can stand for decades or collapse without warning. That morning, the serac chose the second option. It happened in an instant. One moment, the climbers were moving carefully upward. The next, a deep cracking sound sliced through the darkness. The massive serac exploded. Tons of ice thundered down the slope, hitting several climbing teams head-on and instantly triggering a huge avalanche that swept across the entire route. Headlamps that had looked like a gentle string of stars ascending the mountain simply vanished, swallowed by a moving wall of snow, ice, and debris. For the climbers in its path, there was no time to react. Some felt the ground give way beneath them. Some saw only white rushing in from above. Some were knocked off their feet and carried down the slope, unable to breathe or move, not knowing if they'd ever stop. When silence returned, 8 climbers were dead. 4 from Germany, 3 from Switzerland, and 1 Austrian guide. 7 more were seriously injured. Official reports confirmed that conditions had seemed completely normal that day. No avalanche warning. The serac collapse was entirely unpredictable. To this day, if you look up at Mont Blanc du Tacoul from the Chamonix Valley, you can still spot the scar left by that avalanche. A jagged reminder that some dangers simply cannot be seen or avoided. But Mont Blanc's deadly reputation wasn't born in the 21st century. Long before modern equipment, satellite forecasts, and instant communication, this mountain was already writing its bloody history. July 7, 1964. 7 French alpinists set out to climb the Aiguille Verte, a 13,524-foot peak in the Mont Blanc range. Among them was Charles Bozon, a national hero who had won gold in slalom at the 1962 World Championships in his hometown of Chamonix. He had also claimed bronze at the 1960 Winter Olympics and silver medals at both the 1956 and 1960 World Championships. At 31 years old, Bozon was at the absolute peak of his physical strength and fame. He had decided to transition from competitive skiing to mountaineering, trading one dangerous pursuit for another. The climbing group he joined that day included several of the region's top mountain guides, each with years of experience on these slopes. That morning, the weather seemed nearly perfect. Clear skies stretched over the Alps. The snow glistened in the early sunlight as the team worked their way up the mountain's steep northwest face. They climbed steadily, roped together for safety, making careful progress toward the summit. By late morning, they were close, just a few hundred feet from their goal. Imagine the scene. The sky is clear, the sun already warming the snow as the team kicks steps higher and higher. There must have been excitement in the air. They were almost there. Maybe they traded a joke. Maybe they just focused on the steady rhythm of breathing and step kicking, each trusting the rope and the friends it connected. You've been climbing for hours. Your muscles are burning, but you can see the summit now. And then you hear that sound. That horrible, unmistakable sound that every mountaineer dreads. In an instant, the ground beneath their boots began to move. A massive slab of snow had broken free from the face above and was heading directly toward them. There was no time to react. In that split second before the avalanche hit, those climbers knew exactly what was about to happen, and they knew there was absolutely nothing they could do to stop it. The avalanche swept all 7 men off their feet and sent them tumbling more than 3,000 feet over rocks, snow, and ice until they came to rest on the Argentière Glacier far below. None of them survived. What makes this tragedy even more painful is that with modern knowledge, it could have been prevented. In 1964, climbers didn't have access to detailed avalanche forecasts or real-time snow stability information. Today, mountain teams rely on snowpack analysis, avalanche bulletins, and sophisticated weather data to spot warning signs invisible to the naked eye. The way fresh snow becomes unstable with just a small temperature rise is something guides watch closely now. But back then, avalanche science was still primitive. Those climbers had no way of knowing they were walking on a ticking time bomb. All of Charles Boson's Olympic determination couldn't save him from physics. The mountain doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise. It simply acts. Decades passed, but Mont Blanc didn't grow any kinder. Sometimes, it's the tiny invisible mistakes that lead to the most devastating tragedies. One misplaced foot, one moment of fatigue, one split second where everything changes. August 12th, 2014. 6 climbers gathered at the Argentière Refuge before dawn. The group was led by a respected guide from UCPA, a French organization that makes outdoor sports accessible to the public. This climb was part of an advanced mountaineering course. These weren't beginners, not by a long shot. The plan was simple: summit the Aiguille d'Argentière, one of the proudest peaks in the Mont Blanc range, then descend before the afternoon heat softened the ice. On paper, the route across the Glacier de Milieu wasn't supposed to be especially dangerous. Just a classic snow climb with stunning views of Mont Blanc rising in the distance. They set out at 4 a.m., headlamps bobbing in the darkness. The glacier felt endless, silent, but for the scrape of crampons and the whisper of ropes sliding through gloved hands. By the time the sun started warming the upper slopes, the team had already covered thousands of feet of terrain. They were roped together, moving simultaneously. This style of climbing is faster than anchoring at every pitch, but it means total trust. If one person falls, the whole team is at risk. But on a morning like this, with the mountain glowing pink and gold, it felt routine, almost safe. And then they simply vanished. When they missed their check-in that night, helicopters launched a desperate search. 5 bodies were found scattered across the lower glacier. The guide was discovered wedged deep in a crevasse, still attached to the climbing rope. They had fallen 820 feet, the height of an 80-story building. No witnesses, no survivors. The mountain kept its secrets. Investigators pieced together a likely scenario. Just below the summit, on a steep stretch of hard ice, one climber lost footing. Maybe a patch of black ice, maybe just a tired leg. The rope jerked tight. In a split second, all 6 were pulled off balance. Their shared connection became their collective doom. 5 months earlier, on January 11, 2009, another tragedy had unfolded on these same slopes. Rob Gauntlet and James Atkinson set out to climb the Grand Couloir, a notoriously difficult route on Mont Blanc de Tacoul, with sections approaching 50 degrees of steepness. Rob wasn't an ordinary climber. He had summited Everest at just 19 years old. He had trekked from the North Pole to the South Pole. If anyone had earned the right to confidence in the mountains, it was him. They left early, climbing fast and light. The weather was clear, the sky that special Alpine blue. 2 small figures against a vast white expanse. And then nothing. No radio call, no return. Their bodies were found that morning, fallen approximately 2,000 feet. The cause remains unknown. A loose piece of ice, a crampon slipping, a single moment of fatigue. Even confidence earned on Everest means nothing when Mont Blanc decides otherwise. You'd think after hearing all of these stories, climbers would stay away from Mont Blanc. You'd be wrong. Every single year, more than 20,000 people attempt to reach its summit. That's almost 60 climbers every day during peak season. And because of this human traffic jam, the death toll keeps climbing. Local mayors have been begging authorities for years to introduce permits and quotas to limit access. In 2020, after yet another string of fatalities, the mayor of Saint-Gervais posted an official warning sign at the start of one popular route. It read in part, "Attention. Mountaineering is a serious business where you need to be able to face and accept death. The access to the summit of Mont Blanc is free, but dying and making others die is not." That sign tells you everything you need to know about why Mont Blanc is the most dangerous mountain in the world. Not because it's the tallest, not because it's the steepest or the coldest or the most remote, but because it makes people think it's easy. It lets you step off a cable car at 12,000 feet as casually as walking out of a shopping mall. It seduces with postcard images of gentle slopes and clear blue skies. It whispers that the summit is close, that anyone can make it. And by the time the mountain responds with its avalanches and seracs and crevasses, it's already too late. In the 5 stories I've shared with you today, 32 people died, Olympic champions and teenage prodigies, weekend adventurers and elite mountain guides, men who had written avalanche safety rules and still couldn't detect the danger forming above them. All of them now part of Mont Blanc's grim history. All of them claimed by a mountain that almost no one talks about. So the next time someone shows you a picture of Mont Blanc and says it would be amazing to climb, remember these stories. Remember that beneath the perfect postcard scene lies a mountain that has claimed hundreds, perhaps thousands of lives. And if you do find yourself drawn there, as so many are, approach with humility, with preparation, and with the knowledge that sometimes, on the slopes of Mont Blanc, even that isn't enough.